what we developed in our lab is another application where we developed two virtual environments specifically for exposure with different types of patients. We did the contamination environment. I'll show you an image video in a few minutes. Contamination, you could touch a dirty toilet, you can put your hands and disgusting stuff. And then there's a violence, sexuality checking things. I'll give you screenshots. And it was developed by a group of Canadian researchers led by my team, but there's a few names: Martin Antony, David Clark, Kathy Mancini, Kieran O'Connor, and Michael Van Murray. So we sat together and designed this virtual environment. And here I'll give you a few screenshots of what you can see there. So for violence, for example, there's different pictures in the environment. There's nice pictures of trees and houses and stuff. But if you look at them straightforward, you see, for example, a tree. But when you look away, when it gets on your peripheral vision, you see the content that we would like. So you see blood, you see AIDS written, you see cancer written, you see naked people, you see murder scenes. That they could either be available to your sight only in the peripheral vision, but never in front, or we can flash them rapidly. So it's kind of a frequency thing, is really rapid, or they could be there all the time. So this is the doubt issue of, did I see really this or that? So we have violent content, we have murder scenes, we get blood all over the place, we get sex scenes, we get naked women killing themselves, we get homophilia, we get naked children. Well, they're not going to be totally naked children, but I think it's enough. We've got death. For the checking, you have, again, the stove, the door, different things you can check. And the virtual environments could be used with the goggles. Or in a more immersive system, we have a 6-side immersive room in the lab. This is a 3D representation of this place where you're actually standing up. And while you're standing up, there's a 10 by 10 by 10 feet cube image projected from that wall right here, including the top and the ceiling and the floor. So when you close the back door and you're wearing these goggles, you're totally surrounded by the virtual stimuli. It's the Star Trek holodeck. And there's 10 cubes like this in the world. There's only one dedicated to mental health. It's in Gatineau. So if you're interested to collaborate, you're more than welcome. It's hoping a video conference thing so we can actually do remote studies. But it can work, all these virtual environments can work on the cheap goggles or the more extreme high-end. And you get more details about the technology for those who are interested. There's a student forum tomorrow. It was meant for students, but if you're students, you're more than welcome, I assume. But I'm not the one giving the talk, so. So this is an example of the video of what you would see. This is what you would see if you were wearing the goggles and you would go in a virtual toilet. And this is the highest level of difficulty and challenge. Okay, so we started with the worst case scenario. And what happens is when you move your head around, you see it in the virtual environment exactly what you see on the screen. So you see the head of someone who's actually walking there. Play. Okay, so you can choose the male room or male bathroom or the female one. We decided to take the male one. So you can see it's kind of disgusting on the sides. This is displayed only on your computer. There's a nice sink with stuff to use drugs. We broke a mirror so you don't see your own reflection. There's a urinal. It's kind of disgusting and dirty. But even in that bathroom, there's 3 levels. So you have a nice toilet where you can actually get there. You can touch the toilet. Well, you're actually not touching because you're going through thin air. But you can touch the toilet. People are asked to touch the walls. That's a slightly more disgusting one. And then I'll wait to the last one before, if you need to take coffee, well, you're not allowed to have coffee, but if you don't eat, it's time because in a minute it will be too late. Okay, so let's stick on a nice picture. You have this dirty toilet which is actually used, and you can flush a toilet, and when you flushes it, it overflows. And this little nice thing here comes out. Okay, and you ask your OCD patient to actually touch the walls, touch everything. So pretty cool for exposure. Of course, pretty hot in the sweat because it's much easier for therapists to do this than actually doing the right thing, the real thing. So in that study, which is soon will be published, it's a PhD study for Mine La Forêt. And what we did actually, what we do when we develop virtual environments, the first time we try them with normal control and patients. We try it with normal controls to see that you should stress them a little bit, but not too much. And then it should be safe. And then we try it with patients, but we don't try it in treatment. We just make sure that it does elicit anxiety like we do with exposure. Once this is clear, then we do either a small pilot study or a really small randomized control trial, and then we go to the real ones. So I'm giving you information ahead of time, and this is the smaller pilot one. So what we did is patients would come, they would complete different environments, and then they would go in a cave, this big cube here. This is a life-size picture of the cave. And these are results from normal controls and OCD patients on anxiety. This is heart rate and Spielberger state anxiety on when they were pre and post, when they had to get into the toilet and then touch the walls and the side and everything. And you see there's a significant increase in anxiety in the OCD patient, significant increase in heart rate in the OCD patients. But no significant, this is statistical interaction is significant and no change in the normal controls. So it does elicit anxiety. We can get more anxiety, but the point was not to make the patient panic, but actually test to make sure that it does elicit anxiety. So if you want to use it for exposure, we'll probably push it a little bit more and really ask them to put their hand in the toilet and to grab the nipple. This is not actually what we asked. Patients were free to stop whenever they wanted. We just want to make sure that it does elicit anxiety. So we have now an environment for OCD patients that would allow us, I'll back up, we now have a VR environment for OCD patients that would now allow us to do the randomized control trial. We did the pilot study with 3 patients. Their data it's not on there because we just finished it last week. But we have 3 patients, and with the 3 patients, we did a multiple baseline across subjects, 3, 4, and 5 weeks of baseline, and then we started the treatment. And what you see in all 3 subjects, there's a significant reduction in time obsessing and the time spent for washing on a daily basis. There's a really great improvement on 2 of the 3 patients, and the 3rd patient is so-so. Significant difference if you use the time series analysis, but clinically it's not as good. So we need to adjust the protocol and then probably get David Clark back in the program to actually start a larger randomized protocol. Now let's move to social. So we did social anxiety, which is obvious. You have virtual stimuli. It needs avatars, but we got OCD, we're dealing with disgust. And now we have to go with generalized anxiety disorder. With GAD, there's a problem. There's at least a challenge for researchers doing virtual environment. If it's a specific phobia, like a spider, you just create a spider and you put that on the virtual table, it's done. What do you do with GAD? Because they're afraid of everything and nothing. It's intangible. They're afraid of uncertainty. So how do you create a virtual environment that would tackle their own fear? This is why, for now, there's only one line of research doing VR and GAD. It's come from Milan, the work by Riva. It's actually the same study if you look at the publication, which is progressively evolved. And what they did so far, was in a virtual environment, you would get in a virtual environment and you would have biofeedback. So it's the old model of CBT, if you remember 1992 studies on GAD. The recipe or the standard treatment at the time was to combine relaxation and we do essentially whatever we could with those patients, which is quite different now where we specifically target uncertainty. So things have evolved, but what they have in there is the old model of treatment where you're wearing the biofeedback system and you get in a virtual environment and then there's a fire, and then with orange just you get the fire decreases. So if you want the warmth of the fire, you need to learn to relax, and then it increases the warmth of the fire. There's a water fountain and you want to relax so the fountain flows more, but you see that in your goggles. So it's actually biofeedback coupled with virtual reality. And what they found were interesting results pre and post. And compared to the waiting list. But that's the weak kind of, if I may say so, kind of treatment for GAD. But that was the only solution we had for virtual stimuli that would tackle fear that are kind of immaterial, like uncertainty about getting cancer, about losing loved ones, etc. But with the same group of researchers, with Martin Antini, myself, David Clark, Guylaine Côté, Michel Dugas, Patrick Gosselin, Richard Swinson, and Michael Vandermarian, so it's always branded Canadian and from across the country. We were able to develop these 3 virtual environments that were specific for exposure with GAD patients, for exposure to uncertainty. And these are examples of the environment. For example, you have this waiting room, so you get to this ER room, you're sitting right in front of there, and there's this woman here wearing a mask, probably contagious. So if you get hypochondriacal patients, although it's not in DSM-5 anymore, I think it's quite useful. You get a receptionist calling people, but never your number. You get this mother here crying, and then you realize that her infant is kind of shaking, and then you close the door and she starts crying for the rest of the immersion. I guess this little daughter there with the mother, they're crying, and they're coughing, and they see the kind of blame, and something is not really good. There's this disgusting man coughing all the time. There's this woman you don't see, but the doctor comes, he looks at you, and then he sits by her, and then he tells something, you don't really understand what he says. But then the woman starts crying again. And then the doctors and the nurse are looking at you, and they're like talking about you, but you can't hear, and then they leave. And then you look really disappointed, and then another one passes and ignores you. So it gives you the idea that something is happening in this ER room, which is frightening, may tackle my own fear, but you're never involved. So you get this uncertainty feeling all the time, and it could be about cancer, it could be about AIDS, it could be about disease, it could be about the disease of a loved one. It doesn't have to be your health, it could be someone else's health. You have daily stressors, worry, you have this apartment there where different things happening, you're receiving a phone call on the message, there's a message saying, honey, I love you, but it's over. You get another message coming from the principal of the school saying, we need to talk to you about your kid, your child, whatever, and then they hang up. So you get all of messages carrying the message that something is happening, we need to talk to you, but we just can't. And then there's this ambulance coming in your streets, and then it stops, and then it leaves. And there's this guy, the group of guys who are actually throwing rocks from a window, and they're breaking, so maybe they want to break into your house. And then you get different bad news on the radio, on the TV, and then there's people who are talking, looking at you and talking again. So you get always this kind of depressive feeling that something is happening, I'm not involved, it touches me, I'm not in control of my life. And all the VR environment we developed in the last years, we try always to keep at least one application for children. So we have a student room where there's letters from the principal saying we need to meet with you. There's letter A and fail and flunk and stuff that will carry a message at you. They're doing good. It's kind of classes. People are coming in the corridor. They stop at your door. They start laughing and they leave again. So it's really, you cannot communicate with people all the time. So different examples that we expect should elicit anxiety and worry in GAD patient.